Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, this is Tammy. When was your last bad day? For Michael O'Brien, it was July 11th, 2001, and it was the day he was struck head-on by a speeding SUV while out on a training bike ride. He shares his journey in his best-selling memoir, Shift, Creating Better Tomorrows, and he donates the proceeds to World Bicycle Relief. In many ways, his last bad day was one of his best, because it sparked his transformation from human doer to human being. And it transformed his purpose of helping sales and marketing leaders become the wealthiest person they know, starting from the inside out. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Tammy. Great to be with you. Great to be with your listeners. I've been looking forward to this, since you launched. So it's here. We're talking.
Thank you. I am thrilled and delighted to have you here. And thank you for joining us from your home office in somewhere in New Jersey. Where are you in New Jersey?
Well, right now I'm in Rochester, New York. But
you are? Okay.
Yeah. So that's why no one can see this, but you can see that I'm in a sort of a dimly lit hotel room. But when I'm not in dimly lit hotel rooms, I'm in Tenafly, New Jersey, which is a town right outside of New York City, about 7 miles north of the bridge, cute little town. We've been there for coming up 21 years, which is bananas.
Yeah.
Think about how long it's been.
Yeah. Well, I know I've been where I am about the same amount of time, and it's, who knew? Who knew that was where we would land, right?
Absolutely.
So we're here to talk about transitions, mostly around career and work. Your story, of course, is, the kind of transition that goes above and beyond somebody saying, oh, I'm really not that fulfilled, or I'm not that happy at work. I think I'll make a change. You had a very, traumatic, dramatic event in your life. And that seemed to be the catalyst for some of the changes you've made. And I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about your background, your story, and what are the elements that really propelled you to make some of the changes that you did?
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for asking, Tammy. And again, super pumped to be with you. So I would say I'll start with my time period before my last bad day, that day of July 11th, 2001.
Okay.
And I was a kid that was sort of more interested in sports than school. And I didn't know half the things we know today. Obviously, I was young, but just the whole sense of finding a purpose, finding a passion. And I sort of just went along as I thought society wanted me to go along. I graduate high school, I go to a college. The college selection process was a little bit more reasonable back then than it is today, as someone with two daughters, one that's already gone through it, one's going through it right now.
Yeah.
But I went to school and I thought after school, well, you get a degree, you get a gig, you marry the girl, you start to have a family, you work your way up to the corporate ladder, and that's what you do.
It was a straight line, right?
Yeah, and that was sort of my worldview growing up. That's what people around me did. So I was like, well, that's what you do. And what I found, so I got into sales and marketing. It was something that I was truly passionate about. My father was in sales. My mother was a nurse. So I combined the two and I got into pharmaceutical sales. And I did what I thought society wanted us to do. I graduated. I got the gig. I found an awesome woman, married her. We've had an awesome life together. And then started working my way up the corporate ladder. And we made the move from Washington, D.C., where we met each other, where we both started our post-college life. And we moved to New Jersey. And along the way, I didn't know anything about gratitude, mindfulness, meditation, vulnerability, all the things that are sort of commonplace today. Like I knew none of that. I just kept on going almost like a hamster on its wheel. I just kept on running.
Mm.
And what I was really good at was sort of putting conditions on my life, and good,
Oh.
not in a great way, right? Good in a very like, it's good sarcastic way,
Oh.
where I would often say to myself and to others, I'll be happy when. So that conditionalizing of life. I'll be happy when I get promoted. I'll be happy when I get to buy that fancy new car. I would tell my wife all the time, honey, it's just busy right now. Once the meeting is over, it will be slower. So I even did that. And she was like, after a while, she caught on to my big myth that it was never going to get slower. But I was just sort of chasing this happiness, as I was like to call it. And to your intro, I was very much a human doer. Like,
yes.
It's a good old Zig Ziglar. I learned this from Zig Ziglar way back in the day. Do, have, be type of way of living. And so the do is work your butt off, do the hustle and grind, as the kids call it nowadays, right? And we call it that too. And then you're going to have more stuff, right?
Right.
You're going to have the car, you're going to have the promotion, the house, the vacation, the Instagram feed, you name it. You're going to have all that. And then you'll be happy, or you'll be successful, or you'll be a leader. And that's how I lived my life up into my last bad day.
Yeah.
And then we had that big company meeting where I brought my bike out. I thought I was being really smart. I was going to cross New Mexico off the states I've ridden my bike in, because I have a quest to ride in all 50 states. Thought I could avoid the hotel gym, because you know these meetings, you've been at them, your listeners have. You fly in Monday, you fly out Friday, and in between, you try to survive death by PowerPoint.
Yeah. Or as I say, death by meeting.
Yes, and just in hope that you don't get sort of inflicted with post-traumatic workshop disorder, which is like you go to these meetings and then for 72 hours later, it all feels good until you go back to your old habits, right? So I thought I was being smart about bringing my bike. It was a good diversion. And then on that fourth lap of my little loop that morning, that's when the SUV came swerving into my lane, going about 40 miles an hour. He hit me head on. And I remember, Tammy, everything about that morning, from the sound of me hitting the grill into the windshield, the screech of his brakes, and the thud I made as I came off of his hood and onto the asphalt below. And then, of course, one can imagine I got knocked unconscious on that part of it. But when the EMTs arrived, I regained my consciousness, and I knew like life was going to be different from that moment on. Just the thought of moving was painful. And for any cyclists in your listening audience, in your tribe, in your Peloton, if you will, who are cyclists, can appreciate the question I asked the EMTs. I asked them, hey, how's my bike?
Oh, God.
Because us cyclists, we're like, oh, yeah, we'll scar up, we'll get hurt, but like can't hurt our bike. And they just looked at me and they're like, well, I think this guy might have a traumatic brain injury along with everything else that we're trying to treat.
Right.
And that's how that morning began.
You know, it's interesting. It's exciting, not in a good way, to hear the story of the accident. But what's remarkable, even in those few moments, is how much of that you remember, because you do hear often that people don't remember an accident. They remember just before it, and then they remember waking up in the hospital. And so I'm curious to know, somewhere along the way in this conversation, the fact that you have that kind of vivid memory of the accident, to what degree does that memory serve part of your scenario today, that you have all of that memory, you know? What does that do to impact how you think about things?
Well, one, it's a great vitamin B12 shot of gratitude, right?
Yeah.
And of framing, you know.
Yes.
And the blog I'm going to post on Sunday is all about gratitude and framing. So I have it in my view, in my picture frame, if you will, a view of what my last bad day looked like.
Yeah.
Right. Because almost almost like third eye-ish, I
Mm.
can sort of overlook like what was happening. I remember the period of time where I was just lying there, a
Yeah.
backboard, neck brace, and thinking this isn't happening, but also willing myself not to fall asleep because I thought if I fell asleep, I couldn't control the situation,
Oh,
which sounds ridiculous, but I had a thing of like, well, if I can control things, I'll be able to control the outcome of things, which is we know now is just crazy, right? That
well,
doesn't
it's
happen.
interesting though that you were even having those thoughts in that very moment and that you remember having those thoughts.
Yeah, I remember because there were times, that I was sort of weaving in and out. I did the sort of bobbing and weaving and the eyes shut, and
Yeah.
how your
Yeah.
body sort of just jolts a bit, and really trying to force myself not to fall asleep
Yeah.
because I wanted to know what was going on.
Oh,
I wanted a sense of control.
yes.
And then even the moment where they put me on a helicopter ride that I didn't want to go on because I was scared of flying back then. And I told myself, like, if you live, Michael, life will be different. It has to be different. You have to stop chasing your happiness.
You had that thought on that
Oh,
helicopter ride.
yeah, because I knew my life was in danger, not based on what anyone said, because the EMTs were just amazing.
Yeah.
So much gratitude for them all the
Yeah.
time, every day.
Yes.
I could feel the pain, like the worst pain I've ever had in my whole life, as one can imagine. But I could just pick up on their energy that this was significant. And even the moment where they were like, Mike, Mr. O'Brien, we've called a helicopter. We're going to fly you to University of New Mexico. I, the nervous flyer, was like, really? Do we have to go on a helicopter?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, what about the trip is too long for Amber? And so I knew not to say that I was clear, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't totally clear. I was a little
Right.
fuzzy too, right? So it's not like, this beautiful picture.
Right.
But in that moment, I was like, oh, well, I got to get to the hospital right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When they
Like,
call a helicopter,
yeah.
you're not fooling around.
And so,
But what's interesting is that even when you're not at your best, right? You're going through, you're clearly, in a state of trauma, and you're still having these thoughts. So, I'm thinking, if this is how he's thinking in a trauma, how does he think when he's really grounded and really clear thinking? I'm sort of, like, whoa.
well, obviously I'm better at it now, but in some ways, the accident has, as horrific as it was, because the whole thing, I shattered my body. But the big thing that made it a life and death situation was when the left femur shattered, it lacerated the femoral artery of my left leg.
Oh,
So I was bleeding out in the middle of the desert. The doctors later told my wife, had your husband been 10 years older or not in shape, he certainly would have passed away before he even got to the hospital.
wow.
So for me, though, we've talked about this in the past offline. It was unbelievable pause button
Yes.
on my life, because like before it, I was on the hamster wheel, and
Right.
and there was something like just very chaotic and frenzied about that, just trying to be Superman at work, Superman at home, and pouring the stress inside. And
Right.
so in a lot of ways, the accident, even that moment, was like everything came to a screeching halt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really the start for me of awareness,
Yeah.
because I probably had signs in my life that things were not necessarily as aligned as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just busy on my hamster wheel and I never saw them.
Yeah.
Now, this accident, my last bad day, stopped me dead in my tracks, or not totally dead, but just stopped me in my tracks, and basically forced me to start paying attention.
Yeah.
And find awareness.
Yeah.
And which is one of the big keys for me, and I think for a lot of other people, to create the life that we want. And I know you love this, starting from the inside out, right? Because that's where all the good work is done, from the inside first. So yeah, I view it as a big, horrific, violent pause button,
Yeah.
but a pretty awesome sauce pause button as it is.
I love that awesome sauce. So when you say awareness, can you unpack that a little bit for us? What did that look like for you?
Well, in the beginning, when I came out of the ICU and I started learning about the accident, and the doctors painted a pretty grim picture of dependency and limitations and more surgeries. And I started to pay attention to everything I'd lost, all the things I couldn't do anymore, didn't have, in the spirit that we go where our eyes go. And I got a different picture of life. I had made this bargain. If you live, life will be different. And what was different was it was darker.
Yeah. That's what the doctors were painting.
Yeah. And so a very important note, they were trying to be very kind, but as leaders, our words matter so much, and how we say those words matter so much. So they were coming from a place of kindness.
Yeah.
They didn't want to get my hopes up.
Right.
They wanted to be clear with expectations. And in my state, I took that and doubled down on it, and it became like, oh my God, my life is over.
Yeah.
And then I had a moment, sort of fast forward into my recovery, where I was just looking around. I was in a rehab session looking around at all the other people going through rehab. And I realized it was a big moment of awareness that if you want a different life, Michael, you need a different frame.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not showing up in the way that you could. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now going back to the accident day, I can now sort of look over the accident and see myself.
Yeah.
But in that moment during my recovery, it was really the first time I really saw how I was showing up. Was I putting my all into it? Did I have mindset blocks? Certainly I had physical limitations, but my mindset limitations were more problematic because I wasn't giving it like all that I could in terms of my energy and my focus. And so for me, that was a big moment, like, oh, wow. Hey, Michael, you can pay attention to what you're feeling. You can pay attention to what you're thinking. And when you pay attention to these things with greater awareness, you now can see you have choice, which was a big thing growing up. Like, it was, you had choice in where you went to school and all that jazz like that. But it was more of like, this is what you do. Like, this is what society wants you to do. And with that, the way I viewed it was there sort of was a lack of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And now in that moment of awareness, I was like, all right, I have choice. I don't have to be defined by this accident. I can be defined by how I respond to it.
Right.
It sort of parallels the great Viktor Frankl quote that we're not defined by our life events, but we are defined by how we respond to them.
That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah.
I have that on the bottom of all my emails.
Yeah. So that's why we're connected, right? So
I know.
And so for me, that was really important. And I was, okay, now I'm going to be really determined. I'm going to be defined by how I respond to this, because those in my peloton, as I call it, need me to be at my best. So my wife, my daughters, my colleagues at work, my friends, and also for me, I needed to be at my best for them. So that became my big focus.
So I'm curious about, you had, what I would say were all these kind of, we could call them epiphanies, we could call them discoveries of frames. You were choosing some frames. I'm wondering, to what degree were you either responding or reacting to the environment you were in the rehab? What was the frame that you were getting there? And were you saying, and the doctors are being very kind, but they're also painting a somewhat bleak picture. So how does that occur to you to find that new frame? How did that come about?
For me, it was it was the frustration in not making enough progress. And I think this happens a lot with a lot of leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs. Like, we want the success that we want. Like, I wanted to get better so I could go home. I wanted to get back to normal. Right. For an entrepreneur out there, like all the, it's the 10x, it's like the 7-figure business or the 8-figure business. Meanwhile, not everyone aspires to that. That's for another episode.
Yes.
Right. So, so I wanted that as part of my recovery, but I wasn't putting in the work to get there. And for me, it was more of an honest, it was in the look in the mirror, although I wasn't looking in the mirror at the time.
Right.
Of, hey, Michael, let's have a heart to heart. Like, are you really putting in everything that you can do? Or are you allowing limiting beliefs to get in your way? Like, are you allowing a doctor's point of view who has seen a million people, but he hasn't seen you?
Right.
Or, someone else complaining about their state of affairs, or what was on the TV, because when you're in the hospital, the TV is on all the time. And the TV isn't really giving us a lot of goodness.
No.
Right? It really does have a way of framing the world. Now, there's some wonderful shows, right? Yeah. But most of the stuff doesn't necessarily paint the most beautiful frame or beautiful picture. So yeah, I think we all are impacted or influenced by our environment. And I think I was too.
Sure.
But for me, it was more that moment of looking at myself, having that self conversation, which is the most important conversation we have all the time, and being honest to say, hey, you're not giving it your all. And if you're going to get to where you want to get to, let's be really focused about what it takes, and then put all your focus into those activities, those tactics, if you will.
So when I hear someone say, hey, you're not giving it your all, sometimes it can look like that's even a self-limiting belief in and of itself, where we say we're our own worst critic. It sounds like in this case, hey, you're not giving it your all was really kind of a deeper pep talk saying, look, I know you're up to more than what you're doing so far. And it's not just more in terms of quantity, it's the quality, it's the way you're thinking about it. I'm also curious about what length of time are we talking about here? Just to give our listeners a perspective here, your accident was in July, right? July 11th, did you say?
Yes.
And by what date were you out of ICU or into rehab, and how long were you, in a medical or healthcare facility?
Great question. And the question before it too, really awesome. So we can go back to that too.
Sure.
So the ICU visit was 4 days. I don't remember anything at all about those 4 days, but I said some incredible things to my wife that I share about in my book, Shift. But I came out of the ICU in the middle of the night, all by myself, still in traction. So messed up. And then I spent another week or so there in New Mexico. They flew me back to New Jersey. I went to one hospital, and then I went to the Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation, where they took Christopher Reeves, our generation Superman, when he had his equestrian event. So I was there for a few months. And then, like the good old healthcare system we have in America, they wanted me out of the facility and at home.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get home.
Yeah.
I felt like I was a super huge burden to my wife, because she was schlepping back and forth 45 minutes each way, as we also had our girls were 3.5 years old. Elle was, and Grady was 7 months. So two young children at home, running the house, schlepping back and forth, visiting her husband. So I was like, I gotta get out of here, because we gotta get back to some normalcy.
Right.
But then I spent the next couple of years just in outpatient rehab. By the time I left the hospital per se, I still had 9 surgeries in front of me.
Wow.
So how long has this been going on? Well, it's been going on since July 11th, 2001. So I live with this.
Yeah, I know you still deal with certain
Yeah.
medical
I,
issues.
I
Yeah,
still have a
serious
couple,
medical issues.
setbacks here or there.
Yeah,
The skills, though, the tools that I've been able to find and discover along the way have certainly helped me 1,050%, right? When dealing with like an issue today.
right,
So,
right.
but going back to the whole question about, you know, like more potential in you, and I know like it is a little bit of a motivational pep talk, and I
Yeah.
know there's like in the internet, the Google sphere, we talk about like you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now, right? So that acceptance piece, and like
Yeah.
you're good enough, right? And I believe in that, right?
Yeah.
I do believe that our harshest boss, the worst critic we have, is ourselves.
Sure.
Right. And so, and we get into this comparison itis of like who has what in the curated world of Instagram and like all the FOMO. We got all that going on.
Yeah.
So I think it's really healthy to say like you are exactly where you're supposed to be and you are enough.
Right.
And stop the shaming.
Right.
Right. So, and I think this is the big pivot for me is the but and the and, right?
Okay.
So we get into like what we see of ourselves, and then we finish the sentence with, but you're not as pretty as that other woman on Instagram, but you don't have as much stuff as someone else. But, and we can, again, it's another condition, and we've been conditionalized since our youth. Every time we hear the word but, it brings about something not so attractive, and it brings about shame.
Yes, it does. And I want to just tell you quickly that this is something anyone who will listen to me, usually it's when I'm facilitating groups, I teach them the yes and.
Yes.
Versus
perfect.
the
yes, but.
The yeah, but. It's not even yes, but. It's yeah, but, like it's one word, right? So this is what you're talking about.
Totally. And for those smarty pants out there, they go, yeah, however, because they want to use a bigger word. So I think part of in today's society, the shaming and all that is usually we can boil it down to a yeah, but type of scenario. What I was talking about in that moment was more of a yes and. Yes, Michael, you're exactly where you are, where you're supposed to be. Yes to accepting where I am right now, not tolerating it, not being satisfied with it, but accepting that, hey, here's where you're starting right now. And Michael, you have more in you, right? So for me, it was about abundance. It wasn't a beat up and like in your grill type of motivational talk that sometimes we hear, like, what are you guys doing? And which is a motivational talk through shame and fear. And we hear it a lot. And sometimes it's profiled a lot in sports and stuff like that. That's all the yes butting that I think has gotten, our society in trouble because we're not fully present. We're not accepting of what is. We are always worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday. And that's a yes, but way of living. For me in that moment, it was a yes, and like, you have more in you. Let's get going and let's build upon this, as opposed to beating myself up and getting into like the victim loop all over again.
You know what else it makes me think about, something you and I have talked about, is the whole idea of possibility. And when you think about the yeah, but, or butting everything, it sounds like it's a pep talk to move you forward. But I agree with you. It is that shaming, and it's that comparison gremlin, as I call it. And when you add the and to it, you're opening yourself up to possibilities that, you can champion yourself to reach toward. And you don't have to necessarily reach toward the exact thing you're envisioning, but it really is more of a visioning approach than it is about just reacting to what's outside of you. It's actually another way of saying from the inside out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's one of those beautiful tools that are so simple. Sometimes hard to do, but I know you do it with all your wonderful clients and your workshops and your speaking that you do. but I would encourage everyone after you listen, like go back into your life, go back into work, and really just today, just try to be aware of how many yeah buts you hear and how many times you say it. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next day, make a commitment to do it a little bit less frequently.
Yep.
And then the
Absolutely.
following day, you do it a little bit less frequently to the point you get to the point where you're not doing it at all.
Right. It's true. And not only at work, but at home.
Yes.
I actually taught it to my husband and he started using it more so at work probably than at home. But he he said it really helped. And he doesn't go for all this stuff I do sometimes, but it really, it's two words. It sounds so simple. Yes. And it does take some conscious effort. And I love the way you kind of put it out there in a kind of a step-by-step way. I wanted to point to also, you have kind of a three-pronged approach to things, or that you've talked about, and we've talked about two of them, and I want to get to the third one. You've talked about awareness, acceptance, and action. And I think we've beautifully covered the awareness and the acceptance part. Talk a little bit about the action piece. What was your path and how's that going for you today?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in small steps, Tammy,
Yep.
and leading to much bigger gains. So part of my action was to develop a mindfulness practice and time to be quiet every day. So that was some action I did through my recovery. To bookend that in the evening before my head hit the pillow was a gratitude practice. So you can continue to, be mindful of the frame you're using. And so for me, one of the reasons why my last bad day can be my last bad day, even though throughout those 17 plus years, I've had my ups and downs and I've experienced emotion of sadness and frustration and anger and joy and happiness and everything else in between. But if I have my two daughters and my wife in my life, then how can I ever label the day as a bad day? And so those two were key. Those sort of bookend my day: mindfulness in the morning, gratitude in the evening. But I developed this mantra of, hey, I'm going to work really hard today to create a better tomorrow, which then sort of got shortened to just creating better tomorrows, where I was going to get 1% better each and every day. And that 1% was key because I would go to the rehab sessions and they would measure my degrees of flexion and extension. And those were our metrics in terms of is Michael getting better? Right. And so I always wanted to move the needle, 1 degree, 1 degree every day.
Yeah.
If I could put 7 together, that would be 7 degrees of movement, which is huge.
Yeah.
And so I worked on the whole small steps, working on the small things with focus. And that's basically how I sort of look at action.
Yeah.
Because we, this, the start stops us so often.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you're talking about your physical recovery in that way, but I know that you also were during your recovery, although it sounds like you're always you're always working on recovery in one way or another still, that you were then also considering what were your options professionally? When could you get back to work? When could you get back to normalcy? And what were you trying to get back to versus what were you going towards professionally?
Great questions. So when I came back to work, part-time, but I definitely went through one of these, all right, now what am I supposed to do? Right. And a little bit, I fell back to well, what does society want me to do? After you have a near-death experience, so you go out to some of the role models, right, that, do a lot of speaking, bad thing happens, they go off to Nepal and go trekking to find themselves. Or you might eat, pray, love it, or you climb Everest, or you do an Ironman. You do all these things. And I'm like, well, all right, should I do one of those things? Should I just quit my corporate job and go to Nepal or go to, walk around the world and find myself? And then in moments of practicality, I was like, I'm still the provider for my family. My wife and my daughters are still counting on me. I'm counting on me. And you know what? I love what I do. what I made a determination though is I let go of the comparison. I was like, I'm going to be really committed not to compare what I have. One of my favorite phrases, especially for entrepreneurs, is don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle.
Ah,
which which was also very helpful in corporate world. Like, your life experience, your corporate experience is your experience. Everyone else has their different pathway. So let go of the comparison as far as what you have and what others have and all that, the lens of scarcity or limitations.
right.
And I also sort of gave up on like a big career goal. Like I made it to VP of North America sales and marketing for a top 20 pharmaceutical company, but I didn't set out for that. Like I didn't set out like, all right, this is what I need. What I decided to do is I was going to show up on my own terms, true to my integrity as far as who I wanted to be, authentic to the situation, and put out really great work, work that would honor my values. And wherever it's going to go, it's going to go. In a lot of ways,
different from how you were doing it before?
Totally different, because before the narrative was get a job, climb the corporate ladder. What's the next job? All right, work to that job. All right, get there. All right, I'm going to be happy there. And then you realize, oh, wow, when you get promoted, it's more levels, more devils, right?
Yeah, more
So
levels.
then it's like, all right, this job, I've outgrown this job. I'm going to go get the next job. And that's what many people would do. Right now, I think, we still have people like that, right?
Oh, definitely.
Across all the different generations, because that's just what you do.
Right.
And as you climb higher, you might lessen the degree in which you're doing it on your own terms, right? Because you're trying to play the game.
Right.
And what I decided to do is like, after what I've gone through, is like, you know what? I'm going to try not to play the game. That doesn't mean I had to deal with corporate politics and all that jazz, and I had to be savvy and smart about all of that. So it wasn't a land of like unicorns, rainbows, and Skittles. But I went in with like, here are the values I want to honor. Here's a vision that I have for the future that had nothing to do with title and money and all that jazz, just how I wanted my life to be. And I made a commitment, as long as I can honor these things in my life and of course my family, right, I'm going to stay.
Yeah.
And the minute that I feel like I can't do that, I will leave. And then in 2014, the company made some more changes. I got a new boss, and then I realized I can't honor the stuff that I want to honor working with that particular person.
Okay.
So I decided to leave. But I also knew I would be doing the work I do today through a little bit of a story that I share in the book when I was in the ICU. So I'll let the readers discover that.
Great.
But it's sort of funny, but it set me on this pathway to get into the fine work that you do, helping others change and building more success in people's lives.
So you knew from the day you left your corporate job that you knew you were going to hang up your own shingle, so to speak, and run your own show at that point? Or were there other kind of decision points along the way there for you?
No, for 13 years, from the moment, well, not 13 exactly, but from the moment I got out of the ICU to when my wife mentioned one gentleman's name, that moment, David Kolb was his name, first guy I knew who was ever an executive coach. A seed was planted. I spent 13 years watering it, fertilizing it during my corporate experience.
Yeah.
But I knew as soon as I left my corporate experience, I'd be starting Peloton coaching. So for me, it was an easy decision. Now, in the company, they called it a retirement because we didn't know what verb to pick. And so many people are like, oh yeah, you're leaving, but you're going to join another pharmaceutical company. And I was like, no. I've been on this pathway for 13 years. Peloton coaching is a real thing. And I felt really compelled to make my website and put it up there just so I could quiet people on the whole, like, there's got to be a bigger story as to why you're leaving our company. Cause I had been there 18 years. So it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, no, no. The bigger story is that I'm showing up in life on my own terms.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to do the same.
Yeah.
You know?
And it sounds like some people couldn't get their minds around that. They didn't really understand that.
They didn't understand it because I think it was like, what are you doing? Like you have healthcare, you have a big salary, you have perks galore, company car, big bonuses, trips, international trips. Like from the outside looking in, it looks like a pretty charmed life. And I will say it was.
Yeah.
You know, it had its stresses, right? Because it's
Right.
a big level job. Like all jobs have stresses. But for me, it was like, no, 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 no. Like this is about pursuing your purpose and pursuing a purpose that also has a whole bunch of passion in it.
Yeah.
So for me, this is easy. And yeah, I gave up all that. Like, you know, this, like you got to go buy your own healthcare.
Right.
The paycheck doesn't automatically go into the direct deposit every 2 weeks. You got to figure a whole bunch of stuff out. I was not on social media. Like I didn't know any of that stuff. All I knew is that I wanted to help people change.
Yeah.
Through sharing my story. And so, it was scary for some. I think that's why they disbelieved the story I was sharing, that this was indeed true. When the website went up, I think people started to believe it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and what you're also describing is something I consider you to be one of the kings of metaphor. You and I talked about this, that you said, look, change is not in a microwave. It's a crock pot, right? And so everything that you're speaking to here didn't happen overnight. And in between all the progress that you made, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, there were setbacks too. And you've talked about all the surgeries. So there was something, though, that you, through the ups, the downs, the sideways, there's something here that I'm hearing that you held on to firmly about where you were headed, that moved you from that place where you were still holding fast to your values by staying in corporate in many, many ways, but then it propelled you to move on. But what was that? What would you say? How could you capture that thread that sort of carried you through setbacks, progress, all those things?
Well, I think the big red thread of it all is just the power of resilience. And the whole concept, you fall down 8 times, fall down 7, get back up 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that it was sort of in me growing up. Did I have awareness that I had it? No, I didn't. But then through my accident and also looking back at my career, the ability to fall down and get back up, as any cyclist will attest to, or anyone who will ride a horse, right? If you're learning how to ride a bike, you're going to fall down. And you keep getting back up. And over time, it gets easier and easier and easier. You get better and better and better at it. So resilience and cycling do go hand in hand. The other thing, though, Tammy, that through the recovery that I learned, that all of our events in our lives are neutral until we label them.
Yeah. And
we are so quick because we're now adults. As kids, we're trying to figure things out. Our labels don't come as quickly. But as adults, we got some time on the planet. We got a little wisdom. And we're like, oh yeah, and we just automatically label it. That's good. That's bad. That's black. That's white.
Yeah.
Opportunity, challenge. Like we label them really quickly based on our worldview, our belief systems, experiences in the past, all that jazz. Right. But I realized, going back to the Viktor Frankl quote, I could label this accident in a lot of, like my last bad day, in a lot of different ways. It could have been like the worst thing that could possibly happen, right? But I decided, okay, I'm going to label it as something more optimistic, more abundant.
Yeah. So
every time that I've had a setback, and we've talked about it offline, like I've had more surgeries, as you mentioned, but also just career setbacks. So I've done a couple workshops, and my mindset wasn't clear, and they were total bombs, like embarrassing, like get in the car, like this is the last workshop I'll do. No one's ever going to hire me again. You stink. Right? those moments.
Yeah.
hitting the pause button again and just saying, hey, Michael, you have a choice here. You can label this any way you want to. If you're having fun right now, beating yourself up for a really bad workshop, then go at it, but we got to stop it. Right. Yeah. But we got to make the shift from this was like horrible, worst thing ever to how is this an opportunity? Like, right. What can we learn from it?
Yeah.
And again, I get triggered like anyone else. So I still have my moments where it's like, boom, label it really quickly. The big thing is hitting that pause button and say, okay, is that the label you wish to really stick with?
Yeah.
Because that's going to frame your life and frame what action you're going to take.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask you about here is, you didn't do this all alone, even though you have some really good talks with yourself. And I love when you share that and you say, hey, Michael, and you're talking with yourself. I find that really, I find it lovely. And yet I know that you haven't done this alone. And I know your wife, your family are 150% behind you, but I also know that there are other things that you've done along the way that have also, given you a foundation to move forward with as well. So I just want our listeners to know that it's not like Michael picked himself up by the bootstraps and did this all by himself all these years. You also have made really good use of other resources to move you forward too.
Absolutely. Like without a shadow of doubt, like my photo might be on the book, but there's a whole Peloton. So for those that don't know about cycling and they think Peloton Michael's referencing Peloton cycles,
right?
The exercise bikes we see advertised.
Right.
So which a really great product, although I don't have one, but I hear they're really great and you should go buy one, I guess. Right. But a Peloton, the word is a group of cyclists in a bike race. So think the Tour de France, and they're all working together and they need connection and trust to go down the road as safe and as fast as possible. So yeah, I'm only here because of my Peloton. And when I was in the hospital one afternoon, I was thinking about like all the people that were helping me, like all the nurses. Of course, the doctors are the high profile folks, my wife, my daughters, my friends, like all the people behind like my recovery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's like, they're sort of like my medical recovery Peloton.
Yeah.
And I was like, but yeah, I think our community and connection, especially in today's world, today's society, where there seems to be more loneliness, right? So more isolation, more just like scrolling through our lives on our phone, that the value of connection and reaching out and the courage to do that. We don't need a massive Peloton. We don't need 1 million followers, right? That's not right. What I'm talking about. I'm talking about the quality of the people in your life and really examining those folks, almost like a personal board of directors that a company would have.
Yeah.
And making sure that we have the right people in our lives that can help us in our moments, from when we're excited and we want to celebrate to the moment we might be challenged.
Absolutely.
Or in a crisis.
And I know also that you're working on some things right now that are also helping others to do the same for themselves. You're launching a podcast very soon, I believe. I want to touch on that for a moment. And I also want to shine a light on your Paceline Academy, because I think that's an opportunity for people to both work with you, but also to develop their own Pelotons.
Absolutely. Well, so regarding the podcast, so I'm following your inspiration, Tammy. So
oh boy,
like, you coming out with this, I'm like, all right, Tammy's doing it. She's showing us the way. I'm going to do it. I've been kicking around for a while. Obviously, we're in a great group, the Alt Podcasters, led by Faye. And so I'm going to do one coming up in 2019 called Shift, Recruiting Resilience. So I want to profile other people who are resilient, have fallen down, they keep on getting back up. So the show is inspirational, it's motivational, and hopefully gives the listener some tools to build more resilience in their life.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I'm totally excited, totally nervous, but we're going to keep on pedaling forward with it and come out with it.
Absolutely.
Now that we've talked about it like live, we got to
Yeah.
make it happen.
Now
So have to make it happen.
well, it is going to happen. I mean, I knew it would happen. We're looking forward to that, but there is something that's in place now already that if people are interested, they could join your Paceline Academy.
Yeah. So the Paceline Academy came out of conversations I had with people who wanted to work with me, but most of the coaching I do is corporate sponsored. And they're like, hey, I don't rank high enough in my company and I don't have the discretionary income to pay for you out of my own pocket. What do I do? Like, I'd love to work with you. And back in December 2017, I didn't have an answer. I'm like, I don't know, but I promised everyone I'm going to go noodle it. And the noodling created the Paceline Leadership Academy. So it's for those leaders that may not be at the highest levels in their company, the type that would get an executive coach, but more the people that might report into them or the next level down, the people that are starting off their career and they want to show up in their career and their life on their own terms. In some ways, they're maybe a lot like how I was back before my last bad day, or maybe they're not that way, but they don't want to get there, right? Like, how do I manage my career in the right way? How do I manage my life?
Yeah.
So the Paceline is about community and connection because you get to be with other like-minded folks. But each month, besides the other courses that I offer on it in terms of like identity and conversational intelligence and learning how to delegate and how to be better at energy management, each month we take a theme and then we dive into that theme with a variety of different content, including a book each month, group coaching, a webinar. So regardless of how someone likes to learn, we have something for them in the Paceline. And so,
love it.
Yeah, the month of January, we're talking about habits. We're profiling James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. In February, we're going to be talking about gratitude with AJ Jacobs' book, Thanks 1,000. So that month, January, we're going to talk about all habits. In February, gratitude. And so we start to build over time all these important puzzle pieces to have a beautiful life, a very, well, as you and I both share this, a wealthy life, but starting from the inside out.
That's right. You got it. Thank you for saying inside out so many times in this interview.
I love about your work. Right. So important. This is like more people should kind of do the inside work. That's the hard stuff.
You know, you're preaching to the choir here, or you and I are preaching, or both part of members of the choir. So if somebody wants to follow your work more closely or get their hands on your book or join your Paceline Academy, what's the best way for them to find you?
The best way, Tammy, and to all the listeners out there would be michaelobrienshift.com.
Okay.
There, they can get a hot link to Amazon or get an autographed copy of Shift. And thanks for letting people know that all the proceeds go to charity. Great organization called World Bicycle Relief. They help girls conquer the challenge of distance by giving them mobility, something I lost, but then I regained. Again, fantastic people, fantastic group of difference makers. They can also sign up for my Shift Tip, which is my weekly blog that I send out to my email list. So you can get
which I can vouch for because I get it.
Yes. So you get some tips on how to live a very wealthy life during the week for the week ahead. So that's the best place to go. michaelobrienshift.com. From there, you can also find me on social media and all the different places we're supposed to be.
Right. And all of this information, all the links, all the ways to access Michael's wisdom and everything Michael has to offer will be in the show notes. So there's no excuse for not finding Michael. Michael, I, from the bottom of my heart to the tips of my toes to the, I don't know what else, I am just, talk about gratitude. I am so grateful to have had you here today. And I feel like we could go on and on and on. But we do need to stop. So thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure and a joy. And I look forward to many more conversations with you. But for now, we're going to sign off and just say thank you. and wishing you all the best going forward with your Paceline Academy and your podcast.
Cool. Thank you, Tammy. And to the listeners, I hope you got a pearl or two out of it. It was awesome to be with you. And I will leave on this note. You know this. I always say, have fun storming the castle. It's how I end every blog post. And I'll say that to your listeners as well.
I love it. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Michael O'Brien. It was such a treat to speak with him and learn about his personal and professional journey, along with his vision for making meaning and a difference in the world. So inspiring. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Just look for episode 006. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Michael, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find our page at tammygulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase fulfillment and satisfaction in your work or other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be a guest on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.